Platformers are a league of their own, jumping from one place to another, gaining new abilities, and even friends. It is a wholesome genre that continues to teach us about proper timing and patience. What to Play presents the top 10 PlayStation 4 platformers arranged by play scores. The play score is an average of gamer and critic ratings. Here comes number 10 with Sonic Mania. After a series of disappointing Sonic titles and movies for now, Sega was in a difficult position to redeem their famed blue hedgehog, well, until now. Sonic Mania was the answer to everyone's burning questions and complaints. It was a rebirth of the failing platformer, and finally, it's great in all directions. GameSpot was impressed by its sentimental appeal, giving the game a 9 out of 10. Calling it an excellent 2D platformer which surpasses its predecessors. It fixed the mistakes of the old titles and managed to bring a modern touch for its new and old players. For Sonic fans, it was huge news. But it's not perfect. Polygon even complained about the game's frustrating controls, which was justified since there are new players coming in every day. Another, from Video Gamer, criticized Mania for its reliance on nostalgia, which in turn gave this title no innovative changes. However, Sega is aware of it and they're planning to improve the future Sonic titles. For all it's worth, Sonic Mania is the franchise's return to form and it has a play score of an 8.80. Ninth place is Guacamelee 2. The Mexiverse is back to explore. A sequel to Drinkbox's award-winning platformer returned to the wild shoes of the brave luchador as he continues to use his brawn and brains to save his beloved world from doom. Of all the list of reviews in our database, a review from Cubed3 gave this a perfect 10 out of 10 due to its huge improvements to its Metroidvania elements. He lauds the game's low skill floor but high ceiling when it comes to its core gameplay loop. It even rewards those who are really up for the challenge when it comes to finding every secret in the interdimensional world. In addition to its staggering success, IGN, GamesRadar Plus, and most of the gaming community also praised the game's heavy emphasis on exploration. However, it is not without flaws. Guacamelee 2 may be impressive, but to some it is a downgrade compared to the first release that already set the bar high. Combat remains fun, but the sheer amount of upgrades and stuff to do left players unimpressed. But hey, you can't always please everyone. Nonetheless, it is a fantastic game. Guacamelee 2 is indeed a prime example of platformers done right. And it receives a play score of an 8.82. Eighth on the list is Ratchet Clank. Also, one of Sony's celebrated titles spanning decades. A reimagining of the first game of the series, and it marks the comeback of the most iconic dynamic duos in gaming. Alongside its release is a film that did not live up to the game's standards. Ultimately, Ratchet & Clank is a step up compared to its older titles. IGN gave it a 9 over 10, admiring its nostalgic charm and the fun selection of weapons to mess around with. Most of the negative receptions of the game received point to its slower segments and lack of something new on its plate. At the end of the day, it's just a remake. But hey, Insomniac does it with confidence. It has a play score of an 8.84. At number 7 is Rayman Legends. When we're talking about platformers, nobody forgets about Ubisoft's psychedelic display of power. Jump from painting to painting and enjoy vibrant levels with catchy tunes and rhythmic beats. It's a Rayman game, alright. It's such a great game, even GamesRadar Plus and COG Connected are already calling it as one of the best platformers in recent times. Rayman Legends continues to push the limits of the genre by adding numerous gimmicks. They may look ridiculous at first, but on multiple playthroughs, they keep the game rewarding as the first time. Most of the game's additional fun stems from its 4-player co-op, where you and 3 of your friends can do stupid stuff together. Aside from maybe Ubisoft's Uplay launcher, the game is a gem for the platformer community. It receives a play score of an 8.84. At number 6 is Hollow Knight Voidheart Edition. Recently, there has been a growing number of games borrowing Dark Souls' insane difficulty and gothic style. Of all the games coming and going, Hollow Knight stayed and proved it's something familiar, however different. Voidheart Edition is the ultimate Hollow Knight experience. It's replete with all the free DLC issued since its vanilla release in 2017. But to label it comparable or a spiritual successor of Dark Souls is insulting. It is not. Hollow Knight is a league of its own, although it does have a deep lore to uncover for dedicated fans. Set in a fictional world where bugs take control of society, you play as a nameless hero with a sword aptly called Nail to strike foes down. A critically acclaimed release, according to Pushsquare, Hollow Knight shines bright considering its solemn presentation and challenging gameplay. They gave it a 9 out of 10 on the PS4. The only gripe this game received is that fans wanted more from it, which was great. At least for now, we have the sequel, Hollow Knight Silksong, to look forward to. Voidheart Edition receives a play score of an 8.84. We're down to the 5th on the list with Celeste. Indie games are all over the video game market. Heck, most of the games in this list are indies. Celeste, if you haven't heard of it, is the pinnacle of platforms in 2018. A simple story about a girl trying to get to the top of Celeste Mountain isn't so simple at all. By injecting relevant themes of today's society like mental health and accessibility in gaming, Celeste won numerous awards including Game of the Year. Celeste on the PS4 is exceptional. With a steady stream of hardcore AAA titles, it stood out as a must-buy for platformer enthusiasts. Even IGN, despite its controversial reviews, gave it a 10 out of 10, calling it a surprise masterpiece, and even we can't deny that. It was universally praised for its responsive controls, fantastic story, and utterly challenging levels that are the qualities needed for a compelling game in 2018. Celeste had everything on the table. It receives a play score of an 8.89. At number 4 is Dead Cells.
That is so cool!
The concept of time and space is irrelevant in platformers. Dead Cells made sure you could learn from your mistakes and maybe, just maybe, mess things up again.
Wow, I suck.
It's Groundhog Day, but for hardcore gamers. As a player who can't die, repeat the process of hacking and slashing your way across a randomly generated castle. In its hybrid of Metroidvania and roguelike, Dead Cells is a welcome challenge for those masochists who just want to do everything as hard as possible. Yeah, I'm looking at you. The game is well received, especially when it comes to their organic level design. Each time you die, a different task awaits you, all procedurally generated.
It's a procedurally generated world, basically.
Is it?
Like, the level looks completely different from before, which is the point of the game.
Even IGN, who before managed to plagiarize a certain content creator for its original Dead Cells review in the game, praised the game's flexibility and beautifully detailed levels. If you can't get past the intense difficulty, you might enjoy this again, and again, and again. It has a play score of an 8.93. We're down to the third game, which is Inside. To call Inside as a mere platformer is an understatement. It is, like Playdead's previous title Limbo, a game you should dive into without knowing too much of. You play as a young boy trying to run away from the hands of what evils may lurk in its dystopian and somewhat Orwellian society. And as a platformer of sorts, you solve puzzles and experiment with various possibilities that don't result in your brutal death. Pushsquare and Thumbsticks gave this a perfect score of 10, and we can attest to that. Inside is strange, unsettling, and the narrative it tries to tell is even more surprising, especially with its crazy ending, which we won't spoil. Don't worry. Most of the game's best features are not even features. The amount of secrets it has in store for players is what gave it a good rating. Much like Limbo, there is a tinge of bizarre to the journey, which once again, we won't spoil. The only concern this game had was its short game length, which at this point is not a surprise by Playdead standards. Inside is a pure test of quantity over quality, and it receives a play score of a 9.03. Second to the last game, Shovel Knight. At this point, anyone with a knack for gaming knows about Shovel Knight, the quintessential platformer that sets a new standard for Kickstarter-funded campaigns. Inspired by numerous classic platformers, Shovel Knight has dug out from the pile of massive games coming all around it. ZTGD gave it a perfect score of 10, saying it felt like I was discovering a wonderful game from the past that I had somehow missed when growing up. That's the effect Shovel Knight had on the people who played it. It is reminiscent of old school games that some veteran gamers can easily relate to. Modern players will enjoy its simplicity, but will stay for its high replay value and massive content. That includes its DLCs, which add a whole new layer of gameplay that doesn't involve digging or hitting enemies with your shovel. No surprise here, it has a play score of a 9.06. And our top PlayStation 4 platformer is ASTRO Rescue Mission. That's right, a Sony exclusive tops the list of our 10 best PlayStation 4 platformers, and hey, for good reasons. Considered as the best VR platformer out there, ASTRO Rescue Mission seamlessly blends these two elements together in an effective VR journey with depth and a sense of wonder, especially when you're trying to introduce it to a kid. Game Informer said that this game feels like it came out of nowhere to quietly prove that familiar genres can feel like new experiences with the aid of virtual reality. They gave it a 9 out of 10. By putting together VR and platforming, it was pushed to new lengths, especially when you're trying to revolutionize this industry. Sony managed to do so with such confidence. And with a lack of good VR titles lately, this one is a must-buy for anyone who owns a PlayStation VR. A much-needed reprieve to life's crazy misadventures. It receives a play score of a 9.08.